Marcus is going to go to sleep. He's out.
It is all over! Nate Diaz!
Hey, I'm here to kill or be killed in Stockton, California. Fuck this little bitch. Fuck you.
Nate Diaz, ladies and gentlemen.
Nate Diaz is one of the most beloved figures in MMA.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
With his I don't give a F attitude, along with his iron chin and a will to keep going, it's easy to see why he is so loved. Diaz will fight for the last time in the UFC in September, so before we get to that, we wanted to take a look at Diaz's UFC career, from his Ultimate Fighter days to his epic showdowns with Conor McGregor. So without further ado, let's count down Nate Diaz's 10 most memorable UFC fights. Number 10. Ultimate Fighter Run. It all started with the Ultimate Fighter, as this was the show that put Nate on the map for all the casual and hardcore fans alike.
Diaz.
In his run, Nate showed his world-class jiu-jitsu skills as he submitted everyone on the show on his way to the finale, where unfortunately Manny Gambarian blew out his shoulder in the beginning of the second round, and Nate won on a technicality.
It's all over!
He hurt himself.
It is all over!
His shoulder's dislocated.
But we can't go over Nate Diaz's memorable career moments without mentioning that he is the winner of Ultimate Fighter 5. Also, it is worth mentioning because since 2007 when the show aired, it was clear who Nate was, as he almost got into a fight with UFC fighter Karo Parisian when he came on as a guest for an episode. Nate was always willing to take on anyone, anytime, which will pay off big time later in his career. More on that shortly, so keep watching. Number 9. Kurt Pellegrino. Coming into this fight, Nate was on a 3-fight winning streak, having finished his last 2 opponents via submission. But Pellegrino was no slouch on the ground either. He had 8 submission wins to his name at that point, so it was thought that Diaz might have to show off his improving boxing skills in the fight. But the opposite happened. When Diaz fought Pellegrino, not only did he snatch up another submission win, showing that there are levels to the game, but he did so in one of the most iconic ways, flexing to the camera as Pellegrino was stuck in Diaz's triangle and flipping the bird in traditional Diaz manner as Pellegrino tapped.
Pulling down! Nate Diaz says he's gonna win! Look at Nate Diaz!
Double fingers and a fully locked and
It is all over!
With blood streaking down Diaz's face, the crowd went mental for him, and Diaz earned a Submission of the Night bonus for his trouble. Number 8. TAKANORI GOMI. After a short and unsuccessful run at welterweight, Nate Diaz dropped back down to 155 to face off with the lightweight legend TAKANORI GOMI at UFC 135. This was a real crossroad fight for Diaz, as it was uncertain what his role was going to be in the division. But when you're facing the Fireball Kid himself, it can bring out the best in you, and that is exactly what happened. Diaz simply outclassed the former Pride champion, battering him on the feet with his patented 1-2s, and after he hurt Gomi, Diaz quickly submitted Gomi with an armbar. With this, Diaz started building some much-needed momentum again. Number 7. Donald Cerrone. When this fight was announced for the UFC 141 card, it had the MMA world buzzing with excitement. Cerrone was known for having epic fan-pleasing fights with his incredible stand-up and ground game, so this had Fight of the Night written all over it. But the fight played out much differently than people imagined. A big weakness in Diaz's game was leg kicks. He was never good at checking them, and Cerrone was an elite kicker. So Cerrone came into the fight confident, as he could be seen as he flipped off Diaz in the stare down before the fight. But when the two started throwing down, it was clear that Cerrone wasn't there mentally, as the pressure and trash talking of Diaz was too much for him. Nate picked him apart on the feet with his boxing that left Cerrone battered and bruised, and his confidence deflated as the third round started and Diaz was on the other side, giving him the middle finger. This performance shot Diaz up the rankings, establishing him as a title threat. Number 6. Benson Henderson. Speaking of the title, we've got to acknowledge Diaz's one lone shot at the gold belt. Even though it wasn't one of Nate's best performances, this would be his only title shot of his career, despite being in the organization since 2007 and having a large and hardcore fan following. In the fight, Henderson took advantage of Diaz's lack of takedown defense, staying out of the submission trouble and picking apart Diaz's legs on the feet. Unfortunately for Diaz, his only highlight of the fight would be giving Henderson the middle finger, as Henderson defends Diaz's leg lock attempt. That made for an interesting moment, but in the grand scheme of things it fell short, as Diaz took his lopsided decision loss. But that wouldn't be the last time that Diaz took a loss in style. That's the calling card of the Diaz brothers. Even when they lose, they find a moment of victory in there. So stay tuned for more. Number 5, Gray Maynard. On a 2-fight losing streak, Nate was matched up with Maynard as they headlined the Ultimate Fighter 18 finale. The pair were 1-1 in their career as Diaz submitted Maynard in the Ultimate Fighter, while Maynard got his revenge in the UFC as he won by a decision. Many believed this would end up being another WrestleFest that Diaz would lose. But it went nothing like that. Maynard did try to wrestle, but Diaz showed some improved takedown defense and then lit Maynard up on the feet. The beating Diaz put on Maynard was so bad that the referee had to step in and call the fight off.
Diaz! Nate Diaz has done it! What a capstone!
And you can see Diaz flexing to the crowd while Maynard stumbles away to the side with the referee trying to keep him upright. There was no doubt that Nate Diaz's boxing skills were elite in MMA. Who do you guys think have the best boxing skills in MMA? Go ahead and comment down below. Number 4, Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson is one of the enigmas in the UFC where one fight he looks like a champion and the next he looks completely flat and uninterested. But when he was matched up to take on Nate Diaz at UFC on Fox card, Johnson came in shape because he knew this was a big opportunity for him. But unfortunately for Johnson, Diaz also understood the stakes and he showed up in the best shape of his career so far. No more baby fat around his stomach. Diaz had a six-pack, and all that training paid off as he was just a step too quick for the lightning-fast Johnson, as Diaz hit him with his signature 1-2s all night, and he let Johnson know too. Each time Diaz landed a good shot, he would point at Johnson and mock him. Diaz even tossed in a couple of Stockton slaps to top it off. But the real icing on the cake was his post-fight interview, where he called out Conor McGregor with the iconic line,
You're taking everything I work for, mother. I'm gonna fight your.
So stay tuned to see how that call out ended up. Number 3, Jorge Masvidal. Now, you know you're a big deal when the UFC makes up a belt for you, and it's even a bigger deal when someone like The Rock is there to wrap it around the winner's waist. That's exactly what happened at UFC 244, where the UFC brought in the baddest motherfucker belt, aka the BMF belt, for the winner of Masvidal versus Diaz. This event was a spectacle, drawing in the likes of then-President Donald Trump as two of the biggest personalities in the sport clashed. Masvidal was riding a high of having the fastest KO in UFC history, as he knocked out Ben Askren in just 5 seconds.
Is brought to you by Modelo.
And Masvidal came out firing against Diaz too, winning the first 3 rounds and even dropping Diaz. But getting rocked and bleeding all over the place was nothing new for Nate. That was his MO. And just as Diaz was looking to build some momentum his way, the doctors stepped in and called the fight, as they thought the cut above Nate's eye was too dangerous to let on. As the crowd serenaded the arena with boos, Masvidal was awarded the BMF belt by The Rock. But it was Diaz who was getting a round of applause from the crowd as he gave his post-fight speech and exited the arena.
Right back. Let me heal up and let's go again.
Number 2, the second Conor McGregor fight. At UFC 202, McGregor and Diaz met for the second time just 5 months after the epic first contest. The event would sell over 1.6 million buys, and Diaz would take home a $2 million check. But that's not all. He would also push McGregor to his limits. After surviving some ugly first couple of rounds where McGregor got the best of him, Diaz turned the table on the Irish superstar and began to wear him down with his pressure and mind games, as he constantly taunted McGregor with each clean strike, and hitting him with a few Stockton slaps as well. The fight would take home the Fight of the Night honors, as the two put on a show to remember. Diaz would lose via a majority decision, but of course, he thought he had done enough to win. That seems to be the story of Diaz's career. Number 1, the first McGregor fight. If you know anything about the UFC or Nate Diaz, you knew this fight was coming in at number 1. Not only is this the biggest moment in Diaz's career, but is one of the greatest moments in MMA history. McGregor was set to face Rafael dos Anjos for the lightweight belt, but 11 days before the fight, dos Anjos pulled out with an injury, and Diaz stepped in. This was coming on the heels of his Michael Johnson win, and everyone was excited to see the pair not only fight, but also trash talk. The 11-day buildup was epic, as Diaz and McGregor had some of the most entertaining press conferences in UFC history.
Like Mike Tyson said, he's scared of the real man.
John Anik. Fuck you. How about that?
But it was topped by one of the biggest upsets in MMA. McGregor came in as a big favorite, having just KO'd Aldo in 13 seconds, and it seemed like he was going to make quick work of Nate as well, as he rocked Nate repeatedly in the first round. But Diaz's iron chin shined through, and he survived long enough to flip the momentum, as McGregor's cardio began to fail him, and Diaz's boxing, along with his taunts, started to pile up to the point where McGregor shot for a weak takedown, which Diaz easily reversed and ended up choking McGregor out.
He's got the choke. Nate Diaz. He's done it. It is all over.
When Joe Rogan asked him afterward how it felt to shake up the world, Diaz dropped one of the most iconic lines in MMA.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
And with that, Nate etched his name in MMA history. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell beside it so that you're notified the next time we upload a new video. With that being said, you just watched us break down 10 Nate Diaz's biggest fights. See you next time.